In a republic, respect for institutions and leaders is essential. But what happens when that respect turns into something more rigid, more unquestioning? When deference becomes submission, does it strengthen governance or does it stifle accountability and progress? In this episode of Mind the Gap, we explore the fine line between respect and obedience, drawing from history, philosophy, and modern leadership. How does deference shape power, and when does it become a trap? Here's Michael with this week's episode.
Here in Ireland, we live in a democratic republic, a system that's supposed to give everyone an equal say. But let's be honest, deference to status, power, and influence still remains. Some voices still carry more weight than others, whether in politics, business, or everyday interactions. And that raises a big question. If democracy is about participation, why do so many of us still defer to authority, tradition, and elites? Coming at this from an Irish perspective, we pride ourselves on being rebels at heart. We've fought for independence, we've shaken off colonial rule, and we'd like to think we don't bend the knee to anyone. And yet, deference lingers. You see it in politics. You see it in business, where connections and networking often trump talent. And you see it in social circles, where accents, education, and background still quietly dictate status. On the surface, it seems contradictory. Ireland is a nation of revolutionaries, yet we still deeply respect hierarchy, inherited status, and traditional authority figures. Perhaps it's a survival instinct. Deference isn't something we consciously chose. It's ingrained in us and passed down through generations. It's a habit we developed when questioning authority wasn't just frowned upon, it could get you in real trouble. And even though we've moved far beyond those days, that instinct to bow to power, to keep our heads down, it's still there. We might not say it outright, but our actions reveal it. This ingrained deference has deep historical roots. Under British rule, staying quiet and compliant was often the safest route. Challenging authority could have serious consequences. Then, after independence, the Catholic Church stepped in as a dominant force, shaping not just moral values, but also political and social life. Priests, bishops, and religious figures wielded enormous influence, and questioning them was almost unthinkable. Fast forward to today, and while the grip of the church and colonial rule has loosened, that underlying habit of deference remains. It's still there in how we talk about politicians, CEOs, and cultural figures. It's in how we hesitate before challenging someone in authority, even when we know we should. It's in how we navigate social situations, often preferring to keep the peace rather than rock the boat. Although Ireland has made significant social and political strides, the shadows of past hierarchies loom large. In the legal and political spheres, deference to inherited positions remains prevalent. Consider how legal firms and political dynasties stay within the same families for generations, suggesting that influence continues to pass down rather than being earned on merit alone. Similarly, the deference to professionals such as doctors, lawyers and academics persists despite increasing access to information and education by everyone. Many still hesitate to question authority figures, even in situations where doing so would benefit, such as medical consultations or legal disputes. Psychologists have spent many decades studying why we defer to authority. Stanley Milgram's famous obedience experiment in the 1960s showed how ordinary people, when placed under the instruction of an authority figure, were willing to do things they thought were wrong, even though that inflicted harm on others, even if they were just actors. His research proved that obedience to power isn't just a quirk of certain cultures, it's deeply embedded in human behavior. Historian and political theorist Hannah Arendt also explored this in her analysis of totalitarianism. She warned that when people mindlessly follow authority without questioning it, they become complicit in systems of oppression. And this doesn't just apply to dictatorships or extreme political regimes. It's just as relevant in everyday life. Think about how often we stay silent in meetings, accept lousy leadership, or follow orders simply because they come from someone in a position of power. Nowhere in our complicated relationships with authority is this more evident than in the workplace. We expect our managers and leaders to be competent, fair, and decisive. But at the same time, we're often deeply suspicious of anyone who gets ahead. There's the idea that if someone climbs the ranks too fast, they must have done it through connections rather than talent. And we're not keen on people who seem too ambitious. There's also a unique expectation around how leaders should behave. Unlike in some countries where strong authoritarian leadership is respected, here in Ireland we value approachability. A good manager isn't necessarily the most knowledgeable, but the one who can buy a coffee and have a laugh with the team. And here's the catch. When the same leader has to make tough decisions, they're suddenly accused of having notions or being too big for their boots. We want our leaders to be relatable and authoritative, and that's a tricky balancing act. Some managers deal with this by avoiding difficult conversations altogether, prioritizing being liked over making necessary changes. Others swing the other way, adopting an authoritarian approach that alienates their team. Either way, our relationship with authority in the workplace is fraught with contradictions, affecting how business and organizations function at every level. While democracy grants every citizen an equal vote, it does not always translate to equal participation. Many Irish citizens express frustration at political systems, but hesitate to engage in direct activism, or run for office, or openly challenge the status quo. The legacy of deference means that while dissatisfaction with leadership is common, active political engagement remains limited. This is evident in low voter turnout among younger generations, the reluctance to challenge traditional party structures, and the continued dominance of legacy political families. Ireland has seen a movement towards greater activism in social justice and environmental policies. Still, in many ways, the entrenched influence of historical power structures remains a barrier to broader change. The same conflicted attitude towards authority plays out in how we treat laws. In Ireland, speed limits, licensing regulations, and tax laws are often considered flexible rather than absolute. Many drivers treat speed limits as vague suggestions, obeying them only if there's a guard at checkpoint nearby. Tax laws? Many people see it as almost a game, finding ways to beat the taxman. It's practically a national pastime. And pub licensing laws? Anyone in an Irish pub past closing time knows that the last call is more of a courtesy announcement than a hard rule. Just as we question authority in leadership, we instinctively resist rules that feel restrictive or inconvenient. But at the same time, we still defer to powerful institutions and individuals. It's a contradiction that runs deep in our national psyche. So what does this mean for us in a society? It means we need to be more aware of the unconscious hierarchies we still adhere to. It means recognizing when we're deferring to power out of habit rather than genuine respect. It means challenging authority when necessary, but not just for the sake of it. It also means ensuring that influence is earned through merit, not just tradition and connections. Deference can also take a psychological toll. It breeds complacency. It erodes critical thinking, and it discourages active engagement. When we default to obedience, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to shape our lives and communities. This isn't just about politics or business, it's about everyday decisions, from speaking up in a meeting to challenging unfair treatment. In a republic, power is supposed to belong to the people, but in reality, it's still shaped by legacy, influence, and social structures that are deeply ingrained. So maybe the real question isn't who holds the power, but who do we allow to hold it? If we can strike a balance, respecting leadership without mindlessly following, challenging authority without unnecessary defiance, we can build a society that's not just democratic on paper, but genuinely equal in practice. Mind the gap.
Deference in a republic is a balancing act, too little, and institutions lose their legitimacy too much, and power goes unchecked. As we've explored today, the difference between respect and submission can define the course of leadership, governance, and even personal integrity. So, where do we draw the line? And more importantly, how do we ensure that deference remains a choice, not an expectation? If this episode gave you something to think about, share it, leave a review, or join the conversation. You'll find more discussions like this on Mind the Gap, where we keep questioning the structures that shape us. Until next time, stay aware, stay engaged, and mind the gap.